Welcome back, and thank you so much for choosing to stay with us. We're still continuing with our conversation on dairy farming. Our farmer at the beginning gave us a lot of insights on how to begin dairy farming in Kenya, and now we want to get into the details of understanding how do we feed them and what are some of the challenges that farmers face in the dairy sector. Let's head all the way back to our farmer of the day.
Okay. Karibu Emmanuel.
Yes.
Hapa ndio tunawekaga ndama wetu.
Okay.
These are two calves. Huyu ako na miezi kama 2. Huyu ako na around 3 weeks. We try to keep them at least in a place where it's very clean. Unaona hapa it's clean enough. Hapa unaweza kula ugali.
Kama mtoto.
Yeah. So hata wafanyikazi huwa tunawaambia the level of standards ya usafi ni ile yenye unaweza lete chakula na ukule hapa wewe mwenyewe.
Okay. Wao pia naona tayari wana maji yao.
Wako na maji yao. Alafu pia they have wako na chumvi yao yenye tumewachanganyishia na chakula yao ya ndama. Na pia nyasi tu kama ile yenye tuna kama ya mama yao.
So nimeona pia kulisha ni tofauti sana. Kuna chupa fulani specific maalum.
Wanapatiwa maziwa kupitia hiyo chupa. Hiyo chupa yao. Hiyo chupa ni ya 2 liters. And the reason why it is advisable kulisha ndama na hiyo chupa as opposed to kupeleka ndama anyonye mama yake is that ukimwachia anyonye mama yake hauwezi certify the quantity of milk yenye amechukua. So unaona ndama anafaa kunywa 6 liters per day in the first month ya kuzaliwa. So how do you achieve the 6 liters? Unampatia 2 liters kwa ile milking yaa kwanza, 2 liters milking ya pili, 2 liters in the third milking. Akienda mwezi next, we go to 1.5. Tunaenda 1.5 liters in the first milking, 1.5. So that comes to 4.5 liters per day. Kufika mwezi ya 3, we do 3 liters per day. So we do 1 liter in the morning, 1 liter in the second milking, and 1 liter in the third milking. And then from there you wean them off. The main reason why tunatumia chupa is so that you are able to achieve to quantify. Okay. Otherwise unapataga wakulima wengi wanakamua ng'ombe alafu wanabakisha maziwa kwa you may not wezi confirm hii ni lita ngapi imebaki.
Okay.
Yeah, so we basically have to deal with certainties.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Wao pia ukutwa na magonjwa.
Hawa ni rare sana. Ng'ombe atakula like us, we feed it with 3 different types of feeds. Tunawapatia hay. The hay comes from boma rods. And then we also feed them with silage. And then there is dairy milk. A normal milking cow will consume around 20 kilos of food on daily basis. They'll do maybe 1 bunch of hay, which normally weighs around 15 kilos, and then 5 kilos of silage. Of course, we mix them up together. So you need to make sure that you don't overfeed and you don't underfeed. Kama ni ng'ombe watatu, we will give them around 60 kg. Huwa tunachanganya hay na silage. Tuna ferment na kitu kama molasses. Most of the time actually we also use Mola Plus. So we mix them together and then we stack them in the blue containers that you've seen in our farm. So once we stack them in those containers, we leave it to ferment for, let's say, 2, sometimes even 3 days. The main reason why we do that is that there is a science behind it. Ng'ombe anakuwaga na 3 different stomachs. So if you look at the first stomach, which is called rumen, normally the purpose of rumen is to ferment those feeds. Ng'ombe anakulaga chakula na meza, alafu ikisha ferment anarudisha kwa mdomo, anachew hiyo card, alafu anameza tena. This is the reason why you see us mixing the silage, which is already fairly fermented, together with hay, and then we stack them in the containers, and then we leave it to ferment for like 3 days, so that way by the time the cow eats that feed, ni kama ushapita rumen. So utapata the rate at which it will process that hiyo chakula will be a bit more faster, meaning efficiency ya conversion ya chakula into milk needs to be at a top level. We are able to achieve even the 3 milking cycles. The beautiful thing about dry matter is what we call consistency of supply. So unaona ng'ombe ukimzoesha the green matter, unapataga the day when you start giving it dry matter, production in a drop. What has just happened to the dry matter ni maji tu imetolewa kwa hiyo chakula, nothing else. Because we cut them at the right stage, we leave them to dry and then we bale them. Then of course we are able to store them. So the beautiful thing about the dry matter again, you normally see the challenges during drought season here in Kenya. So the only way you're able to be on top of the game is if you're able to store those dry matter enough to run you for the entire season. And then once the cow gets used to the dry matter, production pia inakuwa consistent. We tried the milking machine. You know, the challenge is ng'ombe pia, just like a human being, when you are not used to something, kuna hiyo reaction towards it. So ulikuwa unapata when we used the milking machine, ng'ombe kwanza nasikia hizo makelele, and then naturally ng'ombe amezoea kukamuliwa matiti mbili atago. This milking machine, all of a sudden, it is milking all the teats at the same time. So ng'ombe alikuwa na feel, hai hapana, I don't trust this thing. So ulikuwa unapata hata kutoa maziwa anaanza kukata. So, and then it was slowing up the process. For you to use a machine, inafaa umzoeshe ng'ombe kama amezaa mara ya kwanza. The beautiful thing about milking with machine is that you up the hygiene levels. But of course, it doesn't mean that milking na mkono means there is no hygiene. We just make sure that our workers, when they are milking, their hands are very clean, they are very neat. Ng'ombe wetu tumazoesha. Immediately once we finish milking, we feed them. So utakuwa unapata huyo ng'ombe, first of all unamkamua for let's say 7 minutes, which is almost the average time of milking. And then after 7 minutes, kama ungeangalia wakati walikuwa analishwa, wanajuaga chakula inakuja. So unapataga wote wamesimama. And then once you feed them, they feed again for another 30 minutes or even more than that. So you can imagine maybe the 7 or 10 minutes are milking, and then another 30-35 minutes of feeding. You've already exceeded that time when the cow will have close to the nini. And then even after feeding, unaona bado atakuwa anasimama kidogo before aenda alale. So you are able to achieve that 30 minutes timelines before they close their teats. So you avoid things like mastitis. Because of the huge demand ya maziwa, ulikuwa unapata hawa ng'ombe wenye tuliwalete hawakuwa wamezoeshwa ile kukamuliwa mara 3. So when we started milking them 3 times, ulikuwa unapata ng'ombe wanakuwa depleted. They deplete their calcium levels too quickly. So ulikuwa unapata saa zingine ng'ombe anazaa kama umeona wale ng'ombe wenye wanazaa alafu wanashindwa kuamuka. That is actually deficiency of calcium. So of course what we did after that, we started investing heavily on minerals. That's why unaona all across kuna the solid block ya salt, and then we also give them the powder one continuously. We don't compromise on that one. We lost around 2 cows out of deficiency of calcium. Kuna mwenye alishindwa kabisa kuamuka. Huyu ng'ombe alikuwa na uzito mkubwa, akajaribu kupatiwa intravenous injection ya calcium, he still struggled. So eventually we lost that cow. Consistency ya workers, umemlete tu mfanyikazi, unamfunza new routines, saa zingine unampata vitu zenye umemwambia, anaenda kufika mahali anaanza kufanya vitu zake. Ama unapata like what has been very common because of the huge demand ya maziwa, unapata huyo ng'ombe amekamuliwa mpaka it's almost 2 weeks to calving. We got rid of that problem by now coming up with a consistent program whereby ng'ombe 2 months before calving tunakata, hata kama kuna maziwa mingi tunakata. Foot rot, which is associated with hygiene issues. So when you have the highest level of hygiene, you avoid such things like foot rot, for example, because unapata hiyo miguu ya ng'ombe saa zingine ikipata kidonda, unapata they struggle so much with that wound. So I'll say those are some of the challenges which we went through. Good enough, we went through a learning circle and we basically exhausted all those challenges. The cost depends on how you scale it up. Assuming you are starting a simple farm of, let's say, 1 or even 2 or 3 dairy animals, the cost will not be much. In fact, you might some of the materials you can get it locally. You don't have to fabricate it with steel the way we've done it. You can also use poles, which perhaps could even be available cheaply. So you can start it with as cheap as 20,000, but as high as 2 million. Especially if you already have a cow. But of course, if you are then forced to start by even buying a cow, that might be another cost. But I normally advise young farmers who are starting, don't start with a very high-end cow. Like I see people, watu wanaenda wananunua ng'ombe, wanaambiwa huyu ng'ombe huwa anakamuliwa like 30 or 40 liters per day. Ananunua huyo ng'ombe, anampeleka pale kwake, after a week, hakuna maziwa. Anashangaa what really happened. It's because huyo ng'ombe, the level of feeding yake huwezi fikia wakati unaanza. In fact, I'll tell you, when we started, we just started with very ordinary cows. Out of improving the first cow, in the first calving, when they arrived here in our farm, after hiyo cycle yenye tulimleta nayo, they were already doing 25 liters per day. That is the same cow which was doing 10, is already up at 25. It's because vile walikuja, now we started a new feeding regime, waka increase even their weight, wakakuwa wakubwa, and then even at the point of calving, we steamed them before that. So at the point of calving, the production was very high. Most of the farmers normally have pedigree cows, but they don't know. So just feed the cows you have properly, and you'll basically achieve the same results. Kienda huko nyumbani, unapata ng'ombe anauzwa 60,000, 70,000, wengine hata 50,000. Yeah, so start with those ones. For the young people, never start a dairy farm if you've not sorted out issues of feeding. If you are able to identify source of feeds, then it will be very easy for you to start and sustain it. But it's a very easy business to start. I mean, all you just need is a cow and feeds, and perhaps the structure. Make sure you have a consistent supply of hay. Buy your hay when it is very cheap. When the market is bloated with hay, stock them for a dry season. But sustaining it, the secret is only feeds. When you start a dairy farm, make sure there is 24-hour supply of water. If you run out of water, inaanza kukupatia pressure zingine. You can never satisfy the market. We always have customers wale wenye wamekuja, maziwa imeisha, inabidi warudi. There are enough of them. And that is why unapata ikifika saa ya kuchukua maziwa, many of them come together at the same time because everybody doesn't want to miss. Ukichelewa kidogo, unapata maziwa imeisha. I'll say the cake is too big for anybody. In fact, anybody who wants to venture into dairy farming, the market is too big for everyone.
Sikukuu ya Krismasi inakaribia sana. Tunaendelea kukutakia mazuri unapojiandaa kwa sikukuu hiyo. Na umejionea mengi namna tunalisha ng'ombe wetu. Kubwa zaidi ni umeona kwamba kuna kitu tunaita balanced diet. Ulijua hilo? Basi twende katika mapumziko mafupi.